I'm guessing that if you clicked on this video, you're looking for some advice on which Ultra-Greatsword you should be using in Dark Souls 3. Don't worry, I got you covered. And to make this easier, I'm gonna break down a few of the builds most players build for, and kind of explain which sword I think is best for each. Some have multiple swords, but others have just one clear choice. Either way, I do hope that you are ready for this. And the first of these builds that we're going to be looking at is Pure Strength. And this one is pretty easy. There is no Ultra-Greatsword that could possibly take this spot except for the Fume Ultra-Greatsword. I was honestly too harsh on this thing at first, because my gosh, this thing will kill all of the universe if a strength build comes along. And that's primarily done through an S scaling in strength, which is incredible, S scaling being the highest type of scaling you could possibly get. Plus, strike damage is pretty nice. Even though damage types are a little bit wonky, and I'm going to have another video explaining kind of what each does and how good they are, all you need to know for now is that strike damage is a good damage type, and it's rarely seen on Ultra-Greatswords. This is one of the few that does actually have it though. In addition to its excellent scaling, it also has really powerful base damage, and if that base damage wasn't enough, it can actually be buffed using stuff like spells and greases. I actually showed this off during one of my Pyromancy Flame videos, where I just showed a quick clip of the Fume Ultra-Greatsword being buffed by the Fire Weapon Enhancement spell. So now for the downside. The big downside is the fact that this is very heavy and has a very big weight requirement. But that's not too bad. Big weight requirements, big amounts of, vitality required to lift it, and a large strength requirement doesn't mean a lot, especially if you're building for strength, which already uses these stats very often. Plus, it kind of gives great poise health in return for being so heavy. And, just adds more benefits on top of that. You get great range, and the skill is basically just a big spanking paddle. So, yeah, I have to admit, I was wrong about this weapon in my ranking every Ultra-Greatsword video, because this thing is good as hell in the right hands. Now, I will also mention, a good alternative to this weapon for people who want a lighter sword is the Black Knight Sword, which has great poise damage, scaling, base damage, and a moveset. I'll be discussing that a little bit more later. So if you can't afford the monstrous weight of the Fume, you're probably going to want to go with the Black Knight Sword. Number 2, Pure Dex Builds. So I am going to firmly stick by the fact that Dex builds should not be using Ultra-Greatswords. However, for you Dex builders, there are actually a few options. And the first one is the Faren Greatsword. Not only is this thing just a great weapon with a parry and multi-hits, but it also gets a 20% damage bonus against abyssal enemies and bosses. However, the real reason why I say this is a great Dex Ultra-Greatsword is because it gets an A scaling in Dex, which I believe is actually the highest Dex scaling out of all the uninfused Greatswords. In total, it gets around 492 AR at the Dex soft cap fully upgraded. So, all that to say, it is a really good weapon for a Dex build. And your second option is the Ultra-Greatsword. Not only is the Ultra-Greatsword very light, but it actually gets an S scaling in Dex with the Sharp Infusion, making it have the highest Dex scaling out of all the Greatswords with infusions. And the skill even also allows for some distance clothing with powerful thrusting attacks, which is really good. Now there is the other option of the Zweihander, which is the second lightest Ultra-Greatsword with an early pickup, and it's got an A in Dex scaling. If it was me personally, I would recommend the Ultra-Greatsword. However, if you really want a good early game option, the Zweihander is pretty good, and the Faren Greatsword is probably my overall pick for just fun builds. So, yes, this one really does depend on the player. And the third build type is Pure Intelligence. So, there are no perfect intelligence Ultra-Greatswords, but the best is easily the Ultra-Greatsword. This thing gets good infusions with an S in a crystal infusion and an A in a simple infusion, with great weight for an Ultra-Greatsword and good power with infusions. I don't know what else you could possibly want from it. The fourth build is Pure Faith. So you really get to choose one or two. You either get to choose the Astora or the Lothric Knight Greatsword. The Astora, as I've already mentioned, is great for lighter vitality builds, but it even gets good infusions with S scaling in both Blessed and Lightning. So really, it's a great option if you're really looking for that, pure caster Ultra-Greatsword. But if you're maybe willing to invest a little bit more, the Lothric Knight Greatsword is easily better. Not only is this thing just super freaking strong, but it gets A scalings in Lightning and Blessed. And yes, it can be infused. It also has unfair base damage, with actually lightning damage on top of the regular physical damage. And, even just a cherry on top, the Blessed and Lightning infusions actually have very similar damage in the end. But Blessed has HP regen abilities too, so for most people I actually would recommend picking Blessed infusion over Lightning infusion, simply because HP regen for just a very slight sacrifice in damage is pretty nice. Plus, as I already mentioned, this thing has innate lightning damage, and the infusions actually add faith scaling for the lightning. So, yes, for pure faith, it really depends if you want to shell out extra levels for the strength requirements of the Lothric Knight Greatsword. And if you don't, you're definitely gonna want to go with the Astora Greatsword. And now the fifth build. Quality, or if you don't know what that means, strength and dex investment. So, my favorite, my personal most loved greatsword and my number one ranked, eventually getting a B in strength scaling, it's the Black Knight Greatsword, and it comes back to take the crown in this just immeasurably great category. And not only does it have great scaling, as I already mentioned, it gets a B in dex, or rather strength, but it also actually has 20% damage bonus to demonic enemies, which is pretty nice. There aren't a ton of demonic enemies, but for the ones that there are, it's always nice to have a little bit of extra damage. In addition, this thing has extremely high poise damage on heavy attacks, and in fact, it has the highest poise damage on heavy attacks for this category, and compared to the other Black Knight weapons, which is just pretty great. It gets 322 base damage fully upgraded, which is really good. Lighter than the basic Greatsword. That's right, you don't gotta invest as much vitality. It even has a very fun, unique moveset, and the heavy attacks can actually hit twice. This is just a sheer powerhouse, and it could also be a great choice for a strength or poise break build, whichever one you want. The sixth build is Strength Faith, and I gotta be honest, some people would say, oh, the Astora, but no, the Lothric Knight Greatsword, there's just no competition. If you want the full details, see the previous section where I just talked about it, because this is utterly unfair in every single way. Just to reiterate, this thing has good scalings with faith and strength infusions, the base damage is out of this world, and you get like really strong power even if you wanted other infusions, which if you're a strength faith build, you won't really want. So there you go. The seventh build is Strength Intelligence. I'm gonna be honest, as I already said, Intelligence does not have a lot of Ultra-Greatswords. They have a lot of Greatswords, but not a lot of Ultra-Greatswords. So, for this, I'd recommend the Astora Greatsword, Zweihander, or even the Cathedral Knight's Sword. So, some of these do have slightly worse scalings in intelligence with a heavier weight compared to the Astora Greatsword. They may get more damage, they definitely get more base damage, but some even get A infusions with, your classic intelligence infusions, plus strike damage, genuinely. However, no matter what the others say, the Greatswords, Zweihander, and Cathedral Knight swords just can't stack up compared to the Astora. The Astora just still has the best intelligence infusions, and even physical infusions if you're really looking for that. And now for Intelligence Faith. Intelligence Faith really did get screwed by this category. The Astora Greatsword is definitely your best bet, with great scalings and so forth that I've already mentioned. But if you want, you can use Lorien's Greatsword, if you want to torture yourself. And the number 9 build, Luck. Luck is not a good build type for Ultra Greatswords. No Ultra Greatsword has any kind of innate status, and they're all very slow. The max status buildup you can get, to my knowledge, is a paltry 39 on the Astora Greatsword. So, baseline, do not use Ultra-Greatswords for a luck build. Look at the curved swords instead. Please, I'm begging you. And now we get to the fun part of the video. At least the fun part for me, because these are the 2 fun builds. Basically what that means is that these are weapons that I would build for simply to have a lot of fun, because I consider both of these builds super great, and the weapons are probably some of my favorite in the entire game. Although that is my bias towards Greatswords speaking as well. So the first of these fun builds is the Faren Greatsword build. This thing not only has a super fun moveset with awesome attacks when you're two-handing it, but you also get a unique skill and just a heck of a lot of fun. You get parrying, which is just kind of awesome. Obviously, it's not super useful, and it's not a good parry either, but it is still kind of great to just parry somebody while you're wielding this gigantic sword. Plus, the damage is still great, and with a 20% boost against abyssal enemies and bosses, you're going to be cooking people. You know, Midir, the giant guy with a bunch of HP, yeah, just get 20% extra damage against him. Seriously, stuff like that really makes this weapon way more fun, especially considering the fact that you have great scaling in dex. So, you know, you're still going to be doing really good damage. And probably best of all is the fact that you get it really early on. It is gotten from the Undead Legion, or the Abyss Watchers. My boys are not only just one of the most fun fights, but they drop this weapon and another great weapon that's a greatsword. So if you're really looking for, like, you know, fun builds, you're going to want to have to kill them twice. Even so, this still is a great weapon. I can't even complain. And now the second fun build is, if you watched the first video, you already knew. You already knew, let's be real. It's the Ringed Knight paired greatswords. I was biased in my first one because these did not deserve such a high spot. But I just had to let you know exactly how fun these things were. First things first, the bad stuff. Yeah, so they are very late game. Like, literally, you get these right before Slave Knight Gale. And they're extremely heavy. Ultra-Greatswords are like that. But, counterpoint, they are paired Ultra-Greatswords. You are literally swinging 2 massive greatswords around. Like, that's so cool. Plus, you're actually getting pretty decent damage and a C in strength scaling. Even if all the other scalings are bad, it's a C. So, you know, there's that. And fire damage, which is a really good damage type. But the real thing that makes this weapon fun is the skill. This skill, I can't even describe what it is because there's just so much. It's explosions, it's massive fire beams, it's everything I could want and more. This thing has range, it has damage, it is fun to use, it looks sick as hell, and it is actually worth something. Genuinely, these greatswords are absolute gold just for the skill alone. And if you're not a big skill person, if you know, you don't really like skills, it's still fun to swing yourself around with 2 massive swords. I don't think I've met a single guy who would just look at that and say, nah, that's not super fun. Yes, it is. It is fun to swing around 2 gigantic spanking paddles and just slap people into next Saturday. And so there you go. That's my official guide to what Ultra-Greatsword you should be using for your build. And did you notice that there was one sword that was very consistently dominating? Yeah, it's the Ultra-Greatsword. It is well loved for a reason. So good. It literally got a mention in just about every single category. So, with that out of the way, thank you all for watching, and, as always, happy hunting.